Hi everybody, this is Paul Cooper with Totes and Notes, and I'm going to do a quick deal breakdown. This is a potential CFD that I'm looking to acquire. It's really nice, and we're going to go over why. So first thing, it's in Pearl, Mississippi, and I'm just going to show you the pictures that I have of it right now. So it's this house right here on the front, really large corner lot. It's a really nice neighborhood, no crime, or virtually no crime, as far as any neighborhood goes. So here's the side view. As you can see here, it's got this nice big outback building. Lots of kid toys here. They probably have a bunch of kids and they don't want to move. It's always a good sign when you see lots of decorations and kid stuff out in the yard. Then here's kind of a quartering rear view. So you can see more of the backyard. Really large lot. Decent sized backyard. Got this shed here. Roof looks to be in good repair and everything. And Pearl, Mississippi, is just outside of Jackson, Mississippi here, so it's a suburb, and Jackson's the largest city in Mississippi. Go to satellite view. Oh, I can't zoom in too much more because I don't want to give away the address or anything like that. But as you can see, it's just outside of Jackson, just across the river on the east side. Nice suburb. So let's get down to what's actually in the CFD here. So UPB's just under $50,000. The P&I is $475 a month. That's a pretty good payment. Taxes, insurance, $161. The rate's just under 10%. 30-year loan. Original amount was $54,172.25. The first payment was on March 25th of 2012. The last payment received was back in May. So they've made payments within the last year. They've made quite a few payments within the last year. That, coupled with the fact that we're seeing toys and stuff, indicates to me that the people probably want to stay. If it'd been 3 years since a payment, then it'd probably mean that they don't want to stay or they've already left and it's vacant. But within 12 months for a CFD is a very good guideline as far as getting a good percentage of them to reperform. The next payment due is June's, which makes sense since the last payment that they received was in May. The maturity date, if they make all their payments on time, was February 25th, 2042. All right, and then here is some stuff I've added. So I just start at 50% of UPB as a basic bid. With this buyer, I know I can get it for less, especially if I buy several. They're very good as far as working with me, and they're very reasonable for if you buy a small batch from them. You only need to buy 4 to 6, and they start really discounting well, and I have a pretty good percentage of getting my bids accepted. So if that's the bid that we put down, half of the UPB, then we could expect for it to reperform and yield about a 23% return. And the way I get that is I take the P&I payments, $475 times 12, then I divide it by this here, the 50% bid, and that gives us that 23%. That's a very, very basic indicator that doesn't include other expenses or anything else. But I usually just do that initially to see if anything's worthwhile, because if a property won't get at least 20% off of that, then it's probably not worth looking at, because probably the only ways that you're going to make money then is if you get the property back. And that's always kind of a crapshoot because you don't know what condition the property will be in. And I'm in the business of getting payments if we can and keeping people in their homes. I don't like having to focus only on exit strategies that get people out of their homes and make us actually take the property. I don't want to do that. If I wanted to have the actual property, I'd get into rentals or fix and flip or something else. And it's not that you can't make a lot of money doing that. It's just that's not our strategy, and that's not what we want to focus on. I don't believe that's where the easy money is in the long run. You may see 100+% return if you get the property and then quickly flip it. But then they don't tell you about the times when the property's trashed out and now you got to sink $50,000 in it just to get your basic money out, and you really don't make anything. So in the long run, you couple those alligators in there, it really eats up your return, and that's why we try to strive to get people to pay again. So we go down here through a research we found. It's a 3-bedroom, 2-bath. The low value's at $123,000. The high value's at $136,000. I couldn't, I didn't initially pull up the last sold data. It's assessed at 73 in 2017. It was built in 1973. It's almost 2,000 square feet. No crime in the area. The rental rate, $1,350 a month. This is good, and this was a little bit high. I went to Rentometer and found 950, and that's the low side. Whenever I pull data, I always pull the most conservative amount. So this is at the bottom of the range. We'd probably get a little bit more. I don't know if we'd get the full 1350, but I do this. I pull the really conservative ones, so it's very apparent then if it's worth it or not. So you take this, the Rentometer number, since this was more, I believe, more accurate, at 950, and you compare that to the P&I. So their monthly payment to us is $475. It's, a little bit more with the taxes and insurance. So, but it's still well below what they would be paying for the same type of rental in the area. I mean, hundreds of dollars. So that's another incentive. If the rent for the place that the person's in, whether it's a CFD or a note, is higher and significantly higher, then you really shouldn't have to worry about a modification, because what am I supposed to do? Modify it down to just some unreasonable number? I mean, I can modify it down to 800, or I can modify this down to, some, but then it's still way below the rent in the area. So if you can't afford the rent in the area and you can't afford a cheaper payment than the rent in the area, then you need to do something. That person needs to do something else, whether that's leave or get a better job or whatever. But it's not sustainable. If they can't afford a cheaper price than the rent, then they're more than likely going to have to do something else. But I guarantee you they know that they're not paying nearly as much for their CFD than it would be for rent. So that's a really good motivator. It's like, hey, if you can't pay, then you're going to have to move, and you're going to be paying, $300+ more a month for a rental. So that's always important to look up. Then here's my bid, what I think we can get for it. I'm pretty sure that I could get in the realm of 40% of UPB for this CFD. And so if we get that, then it would be this $19,900 right here versus the $24,000, almost $25,000 for our bid. Then over here, I add in expenses, and we'll get to that in a second. And so you add these two together, the bid plus the expenses, and that comes out to the total cost. And so I'd round this up to $28,500, and that's what I'd say we need to invest and cover all the expenses. So expenses, typical CFD expenses, if we have to evict or foreclose, that's probably going to be about $2,500. Mississippi shouldn't be a very expensive state to evict in. It's hard to tell if we'll have to evict or foreclose. Usually with CFDs, you can evict, except in a lot of states, if they've been paying for 5+ years or more, or if they've brought down a 20% plus down payment, then they have a lot of equity, and most states will recognize that until you have to foreclose on them. That way, if you do foreclose on them, then you don't get to keep everything. You get your UPB plus attorney fees and other expenses and arrearages, and then any overages after that would go to the homeowner or the borrower. And so that's just something to keep an eye on, because you may be expecting to get a lot of equity and you may not get it all. So, but that should still be okay, and I'll show you how that would affect the yield here in a minute. So, $2,500 for eviction or foreclosure, and then $1,000 to $2,000, sometimes a little bit more for broker and management fees. And so, what these are going to be, I have to pay brokers a lot of the time to get certain notes. Sometimes I do, sometimes I don't. And so that'll pay them for their brokerage fee. And then it pays any management fees I have to pay as far as doing some other due diligence and paying for people to actually work and perform some duties on the initial due diligence side. The next big item and cost associated with CFDs and notes would be a $1,500 servicing fee with Madison Management. We try to use Madison Management for most of our stuff if we can. They're really good, very reasonably priced, and $1,500 should cover a year, maybe a little bit more for servicing. I think we currently, if we have them doing our secondary or do our special servicing, then they're roughly, I believe, $90 a month. So $1,500 would be more than a little bit more than a year, not quite a year and a half worth of servicing. And we tell people, if you do invest with us, or you just doing it on your own, you're doing a CFD or a lien or a note, that you probably need to be able to have your money in there for at least a year and a half. You're probably going to average being in any position about a year, because sometimes you get out a lot sooner and sometimes longer. It just depends. But if you have it in for a year and a half, then that should cover most states except really slow foreclosure states. Like if you buy in Chicago, New York, or New Jersey, it'll take a lot longer than that. It'll take years. So another item that we have to pay for is a title O&E report. It's a owner and encumbrance report. Very important. You want to make sure that you have the first position on any property that you're going to be buying the note on. If there are other liens, you want to know about them. You want to see if there are any taxes on there, and if it's going to tax foreclosure, or if it did go to tax foreclosure. The next thing is a BPO, a broker price offering. Yeah, I believe that's what it stands for. And that will basically, they're going to value the home for you. And you always tell them that you want that as is. And that's what it usually should be. And so you're getting accurate data on what that home should be worth. And then what you'll also want to do, and I don't put this in as an expense, is you want to have a realtor, a good realtor that's familiar with the area. Probably also have them pull up a desktop CMA, comparative market analysis, and have them tell you, okay, so you could probably get this price for it. Well, what's my 30-day quick offer? You know, if I wanted to get rid of this in 30 days, what that price would be. Have them drive by, take some photos, and then you can compare those two to make sure that they're on the same page. Next thing, filing and postage fees, $200. Just, there's a lot of paperwork in the note business, and a lot of little just administrative fees here and there. That helps go to that. Assignments, if you need assignment work or getting stuff assigned or filed, which we always do, then that's about $125. For force-placed insurance, which we get on every property unless the borrower can prove that they're paying for insurance, it's $50 to $70 a month. It just depends. Sometimes it's more, sometimes it's less. And the cool thing about this is it's billed back to the borrower. We can actually have the servicer bill it to them. So they either are motivated to get their own insurance quick, or it's just another expense we get to add on if we evict or foreclose. Down here, $1,500 for a clean out or touch-ups. This would only happen if we end up getting the property back. So let's say we get it back, they leave a bunch of stuff in there. We pay some people to come out with a dumpster and clean it out. They may need some light paint here and there. And I'm talking light. Like, this will not cover a full rehab. If we need to do a full rehab, that would be a discussion that I'd have with my JV partner. We'd figure out, do we want to do it? If we do, how much is it going to cost, and how much more will it get us on that once we go to sell? And but this will cover a lot of the basic stuff if we do get the property back. If we get the property back, we're probably going to have to pay several months worth of utilities. And some states, you may have to pay for utilities if the borrower left without paying for everything, but that's kind of rare. Most states, it doesn't stay with the home; it stays with the borrower. But we put that in there in case we have to pay some back utility fees, and then also just because we're probably going to need power and water and everything hooked up when we go to sell it, especially if we need to do a little bit of rehabbing. After that, probably about $100 a month in maintenance if we have to take the property. That'll include lawn mowing, winterizing the property if we have it through the winter, replacing light bulbs, having someone drive by to check on, just some basic stuff like that. And then if we take it back, we're going to have a locksmith go out there and secure the property for us. It just depends. Some places, some parts of the country are really cheap to get a locksmith out there. Then other places are really expensive. So we account for $350, and that'll usually cover most places as far as getting at least a front door and a back door lock changed out. And so these are kind of the standard expenses that we want to account for. Now, obviously, if the note starts reperforming, you're not going to have an eviction or foreclosure. You're not going to have some of these expenses. If you do a deed in lieu, you're not going to have some of these expenses. Like, you wouldn't have the eviction or foreclosure, but you may still have to do a clean out and have the property secured in utilities. And so it's just nice to know what to expect. And so on this property, Since I'm going to have to pay some pretty big brokerage fees for this, we're saying the expenses would be about $8,500. A lot of times we can keep it around $5,000. It just depends. Some properties are more expensive than others. Luckily, this one has a lot of upside potential, so really having the extra expenses in there is not an issue at all. So if we go over here, if we get it reperforming, and this, let's say we're all in for, I'll even edit this here, so 28,500 is what we're saying we're going to need. So we're going to reperform for roughly 20%. So if we get them to start making payments and we do nothing else, then the investment's earning 20% each year. Now let's say we have to get the property back. Well, when we get the property back, we're going to put in a quick move price. You know, we're thinking the fair market value for it's roughly in the mid 120s. Well, we're not going to put it at that because it may have to sit for 3 to 6 months to get that price. We want to put in a 30 to 60 day quick move price. And so a really quick and easy calculation to do is you take 80% of the fair market value. So that'd be $100,800. And that should be a discounted price plus that which should cover paying the commission for your realtor and paying taxes on it for the sale. So if you take 80% of the fair market value, most of the time that should be a fairly accurate number on what you should get back after selling, paying expenses, and discounting it to move it faster. Sometimes it's more, sometimes it's less. It just depends on how hot that market is. So if we are able to sell it for $100,800, then that would be our ROI. So we're saying $108,000 minus our total cost of $28,500 divided by our total cost comes out to 254%. So if we get a standard REO, if we evict or foreclose and it doesn't drag out and cost us a lot of money, we get the property back in decent condition, then that's roughly what the return should be on our expenses for the investment. Now, if we get it back and it's trashed out, that's going to go down. But if you're getting a home that you should be able to sell for roughly $100,000 and you're getting it for not quite $29,000, there's a lot of room in there to do a fairly decent sized rehab if you have to and still make a lot of money. So let's say you had to drop quite a bit in there. It drops from $250 to $200. That's still a pretty insane return. And then let's say they wanted us, or they have enough equity in there where we have to foreclose. They won't let us evict. We have to foreclose. So maybe it costs a little bit more. It takes a little bit longer. And let's say any overage has to go to the original borrower or other lien holders. So what we do then is we're not going to get to keep that $108,000. What we're going to get is this initial UPB, because that's what we're paying for, plus any expenses. So that would be our fixed place insurance if they don't pay it. That would be attorney fees. So our foreclosure fees should actually be coming back to us, and that'll include any arrears. So that could be significantly higher. That could be almost $70,000 to $80,000. And so we wouldn't be able to keep $100,000, but if we got $70,000 to $80,000, that's still a pretty significant return. So let's say it's on the low side and just 70. That's all we're able to keep. So we're going to take 70,000 minus. Now this would probably be a little bit different. It just depends. So we'd get $41,500 in profit. We'll take that and divide it by our initial investment. And so you're looking at 146%. Now that may be tweaked a little bit depending if we have to come back with more money and do a rehab and things like that. But honestly, I think worst case scenario, if we had to take this property back, and assuming it's not just completely trashed and needs a completely new everything, we're at least looking at 100% ROI for if we get the property back and sell it. So that's pretty good. Then the other cool thing is we were talking about how 20% would be the reperforming rate. So if we just kept it till payoff, we'd be making 20% each year. Well, that's not always what people want to do. You may want to get money before then. So what we do is we do a note sale. And so after 6 to 12 months of seasoning, we can market it as a performing note and sell it for a significantly higher percentage of UPB than what we acquired it for. So what I like to do, again, for the note sale, I kind of follow the REO rules. You can usually get 80% of the UPB of a reperforming note. So if we paid 40% initially, and then we turn around and sell it for 80%, that's a huge 40% difference in the UPB that we're going to make. So what I do there to calculate that is my note sale would be 80% of this initial UPB minus a year's worth of payments. So it would be the $49,787 minus 12 months of payments of minus $5,700. And that's how I figure out what we should be able to get close to when we do a note sale. So then actually calculate the ROI or the yield if we exited the position with a note sale. So that would be a year of payments, the $5,700 plus this almost $41,000 here, and then you subtract your total cost and then divide it by the total cost, and that equals 44%. So if we get this reperforming and sell it after as a reperformer, we should be able to make roughly a 44% return on this initial investment of $28,500. Not shabby at all. Sometimes you'll find deals that'll have a higher note sale return, but that's a pretty sweet deal. And then the huge upside potential here is all the equity in the home. If they don't want to play ball or they can't and they make us foreclose or evict them, then we're looking at a very large payout. Large enough to where it would be worth having to do some light remodeling or rehabbing if we had to. And so that's kind of the basics here of this deal. The pictures that I have are a little old, so I'm going to have a realtor drive by, which isn't a big deal because even if the pictures you have are new, you still always want to have someone go by and look at the property before you actually sign the loan sale agreement. And you can sign a contract, but before you wire, you always want to look at the collateral file, have someone drive by the home and make sure the taxes and everything are good. I've already checked the taxes. I looked online and I called, and they appear to be paid, which is good. So that's a non-issue. I still need to call and check utilities to make sure the utilities on. If you do that, that's a pretty good indicator that someone's in the home if the utilities are on. If the utilities are not on, then I almost always kill the deal. It's just not worth it. But if they're paying taxes and the utilities are on, the more than likely someone's in that home and the more than likely they want to stay. So those are very good indicators if you want to have the note reperform and you don't want to focus on just getting vacant properties. Well, everyone, that's everything for this deal. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to me, and I look forward to helping you all in the future.